Welcome to Very Honored Frater PT's Esoterinerd podcast, episode 112, in which Robby Strong and Eli and Bishop Leo and I have a conversation about a lot of things. It's in the description, but the title of this episode is The Other Left-Hand Path. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the term, left-hand path usually refers to like sort of an evil, selfish form of magic, as opposed to the right-hand path, which is like more selfless or something. But the other left-hand path, I'm actually referring to American politics. The Democrats, the donkeys, the liberals, maybe the democratic socialists as well. And then, of course, when you go a little further to the left, you get into the Marxists and the Leninists and all this good stuff. So we'll do something a little different for today's segment. Thomas and the Wolf by Edward Reeb. I'm going to read you chapter 1. Notice that there's red text and there's green text. So for those of you who've read The Never-Ending Story, you might have a little bit more insight into some of the subtleties of Thomas and the Wolf than most on first reading. The first chapter is called Rivalry. Is there a place I can set this where it looks okay? And I'm talking to the people on YouTube. For those who are listening, again, I know I always do that. This isn't the most flattering angle, but better than having it jumping around in my hand, right? Okay, so you can pretend you're sitting around and gonna do story time. See, there's me with Piyu or Priyal, and you can see the description here. Tom is a workaholic left tuber trying to balance having a life, making the world a better place, and pleasing the YouTube algorithm. The wolf is the unofficial mascot for the alt-right. I'm reading that backwards, but hopefully you saw it forwards. Okay, so here we go. This is chapter 1, Rivalry. This is red letter text now. The new competition, the new race for space, the new rivalry is to uncreate rivalry. Those who accept this already know it. Those who resist it will create its joy being thrust upon them. Everybody gets to win. In the myriad levels and frequencies of spaces and places, the now dance reigns through all. In the place where night and day are one, differences in doctrines are dissolved in the process of aligned experience. Okay, we're moving on to the green text. So that was the red text. If you've read, there's a lot of books that do this. For example, Dune and a few others, they'll have like a little, I think Foundation might have been the first ones to do it, where he had a little paragraph from the encyclopedia. Anyway, moving on to the green text. For Pete's sake, Ebenezer Rothschild is not even a real person, Thomas said, slamming his fist on the table in front of him. He took a moment to collect himself. He closed his eyes, took a breath, and remembered that he's not one of those angry pundits trying to stir up bad vibes. He's a part of the solution, not part of the problem. He looked back at the camera. I'll edit this part out. Here's a little dot indicating that we're kind of a change in scene. Still green text, though. I just want to know where this is going. Tom and Gwen sat at their usual table in what appeared to be a coffee house. But the food was so good it might be a Michelin 3-star restaurant. Gwen was once Thomas's high school crush, who he'd finally gotten the courage to ask out to prom. Then there was college. Then came the YouTube channel. Thomas held up one finger and continued chewing his avocado toast, stalling for time. He'd been dreading this conversation for weeks. Finally, he came out with it. Look, I know you dream of a house with a white picket fence and all that. That hadn't sounded the way he'd intended. What I mean is the algorithm. I know. Gwen put her hand on his. I know. Tom hadn't expected to cry, but he wasn't embarrassed. That would be gender normative. She wiped his face with a napkin. So, this is it? He looked at her for a moment. He loved her. There was no denying that. If it were up to him, he'd be with her for the rest of his life. He shrugged. I guess so. And that was the end of that. Tom checked his phone and reached for his wallet. Gwen said, I got it. Tom said, thank you. To do otherwise would be a microaggression. Sorry, I got a deadline, I know. Change of scene. Little dot. Change of character, too, by the way. I do not align myself with Nazis, whether you mean those of World War II-era Germany or those who call themselves that today. The press man pointed to the swastika tattoo over his heart and the surrounding runes on his well-maintained torso. How do you explain this? When I was 18, I dropped out of high school and went to India. Lived there for 7 years. This tattoo was given to me by the same Brahmin who gave me these mala beads after I climbed a sacred mountain, chanted Om Namah Shivaya well over 100,000 times, and a lot of other things. Oh, okay, I see. So it's nothing to do with Nazis, the pressman said sarcastically, raising an eyebrow to his audience behind the camera lens. So then, why is your perfectly spiritual, not racist at all, swastika tattoo surrounded by Germanic runes again? He crossed his arms, standing tall and proud. Because I honor my ancestors, like the Bible taught me, like Confucius and anyone worthy to be called human called me. And my ancestors came from England, Scotland, the Netherlands, Germany too. Runes are part of my heritage. And see, here and here are Celtic knots, because Celts are part of my heritage too. Pressman says, so would you say you're proud of being white? Hey, those are your words, not mine. Yours and Carl Linnaeus. The wolf paused, like he expected Pressman to say something. Nothing? Really? You should Google that. Look, if it came down to a race war, I know what side I'd be on. But if you respect me, I'll respect you. And being your rival doesn't mean I think my ancestors are better than yours or my genes are superior. It just means I look out for my own, just like you do. Ultimately, I look out for myself. He thrust his thumb into the center of his chest. Excuse me, I was a little low. I see, Pressman says. Is that why you call yourself the lone wolf? Is that a real wolf's head? The pressman indicated the taxidermized upper jaw and head of the gray wolf that the tall bearded white man was wearing as a hat. Just the wolf. I am the wolf. When you look at me, you are looking through me at the great wolf spirit. My ego died a long time ago. I killed it. Meaning I, the wolf, killed it. Now I'm just the wolf. The pressman tried to stifle a laugh, but also seemed to be a little bit afraid. Well, that's about all the time we have. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us here at WOWT. Fake news! The wolf got the last word in, then proceeded to howl and return to the chanting crowd, pouring 2 beers over his own head. USA! USA! If you're interested in finding out what happens next, it's available on Amazon. And so without further ado, let's get to that conversation, shall we? Greetings, Frater. Hello.
How are you?
I'm very, very well. How are you?
I'm doing well.
That's good. Oh my gosh, I almost didn't recognize you.
So good to see you, man, in real time.
Yeah.
If you refer to me as Eli.
Eli. Okay, I'm gonna edit that part out. Okay.
Yeah, it's good to meet you, man. I'm digging your beard.
Thank you.
From one hairy brother to another.
Hey,
Yeah,
the Bluetooth might be a bit better.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'd love to show you my sky altar out here. This is my front yard, and when you walk out past the garden, I have let me see if I can turn this maximum bright now. Yeah, I have this this altar. I'm not sure how much you can see, but it's a fire pit with 12 zodiacals around it, with each of them. And here we are right now. We're in Sag right now. So it's all about getting some Sag in your vag. and I always like to see where people are on my little algorithm machine here. This is like a synchronicity machine. So on the inside, I have this fire pit with the 12 zodiacals, and on the outside, I have the macrocosm. I have this sort of altar bench with the angel names I was trying to memorize, so I painted them on the stump. And then there's sigils and on all the stumps here, and you can see it goes through all 7. And I have a few little odds and ends, like on the Mars altar. Can you see the Mars sigil? Is it?
Yeah, a bit.
Yeah. I have a donkey jawbone, kind of invoking Samson the Nazarite, who was kind of like the right arm of God, so to speak, and he's just he's a saint kind of that I've been working with in literature with a book I'm writing right now.
Very cool.
Where are you? What's your? Are you comfortable saying your sun and moon sign?
Yeah, my sun sign is Sagittarius. My moon sign is at the end of Taurus.
All right, right on, man. Your sun sign's my moon sign. Sag over here, and then Taurus over here. I just kind of like to have the visual when I'm talking to people sometimes. and of course, we have a very honored BT over here, Virgo. What's your moon sign?
It's same as his, end of Taurus.
Okay.
And then I'm right at the end of Virgo. So I'm right in the last part of the earth signs with my sun and moon.
And I did some I opened the altar up tonight with the water and the fire, as it were.
Nice.
Some IPA here is and I did the Holy Spirit Domine, Support Munabur, Lava Bismayet.
Super Novem DL Babor.
Super Novem DL, right. And so opening the altar with water.
Cheers. Oh, I'm waking up, so I'll cheers with my coffee.
And opening the fire, the altar with fire. Incensumus Dudate Benedictum, Ashanate Domine Yetishindam Super Nos Misericordia Tuo.
I can join in the spirit of that as well.
All right.
Actually, I saved a tiny little piece just for this.
Right on, brother.
Yeah, I'm trying to cut down.
I'm going to do a pretty good cleanse after New Year's. I'm turning 50 this year.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, half a damn century,
Yeah.
I feel every bit of it. So I'm going to give up meat again, and I'm going to give up alcohol again, and I'm going to cut the weed back to just once or twice a day, which for me would be downstepping.
Yeah.
I started smoking kind of regularly right around the beginning of the Trump administration.
Yeah.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
Do you have an altar set up over there where you're at, brother?
Yeah, I've got a temple space and a room behind me.
Wow. Are we allowed to look at it, or is it like a completely secret, private thing?
Well, currently you're in my computer, so it'd be difficult to take my computer in there.
Come on, you're a big guy.
Maybe later we can go with the phone.
Yeah, at some point we'll do the phone.
Yeah, right on.
But it's basically a Golden Dawn standard setup. I've got the two pillars and the banners, and I've got sheets up on the walls to black them out. And then I've got a Masonic carpet on the floor.
Oh, rad.
And then I've got my big screen Spirit TV. I've got a 37-inch scrying mirror that I keep between the pillars.
How cool.
A scrying television.
Yep.
That works.
Hey,
it's a black
that's
mirror.
Well, it's a 37-inch glass tabletop that I just found.
Cool.
Wow.
And so that's my TV, is that big
right. Yeah.
scrying mirror.
The old-fashioned
I like-
TV.
Yep.
I like your cemetery backdrop there. That's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Is that like a tapestry, or?
Oh, random picture I found on the internet.
Oh, this is one of those internet. Gosh, I'm such an old man. That's an internet thing. You can like put your backdrop up there.
Yep. It hides the mess that's behind me.
Yeah. So, what's your story with very honored Ed? I like to.
So I joined HOMSI back in 1999,
Mhm.
and at the time they gave us two mentors.
Oh God, was I
And-
one of them?
Yep.
I'm so
Oh,
sorry,
far
Freder.
out.
1999. Oh
Stories.
no.
Stories.
I had a philosophist mentor and an adept mentor, so I didn't work with him very much at the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was
That's how we met.
Eric V. Cisco.
And, yeah, that-
goes by. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Eric V. Cisco. He was he was the
Episode
main
55.
mentor.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because in 2000 we'd all planned on going to Power Week together,
Power Week.
and that was the summer that he quit. And
Oh.
so I showed up to California not knowing
What
anybody.
would Satan do? Right?
Yeah. Yep, I had my "What Would Satan Do" shirt. I had no idea who anybody was, and I'm walking around like, so is Frater PR here? And they're all like, who? I'm like, Frater PR, he's my mentor. And they're like, oh, is that the guy that just quit? And I'm like, what the hell? What have I gotten myself into?
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you
And-
find out about it?
Edward saved me.
Oh.
So what was your
good.
original thread that led you to that temple?
It was sort of weird. I started doing magic stuff when I was a kid because my grandparents were spiritualists.
Right.
And so I was reading all sorts of weird stuff from a very early age. And I introduced one of my friends to the weird esoteric-y, magic-y kind of stuff. And he found HOMSI and would not tell me about it at all. He took that vow of secrecy seriously. And I went over to his house one time to visit, and when I got home, there were flyers in my books. I brought books over to show, like, look at the neat things that I got, and he had flyered my books.
Right on.
And so
That's sweet.
that's how I found it. Yeah, it was.
He did tell you about it indirectly.
Yeah, he told me about it indirectly.
That's fun.
That's cool. So, were you at Power Week?
Oh yeah, I went to several Power Weeks. Actually, I stayed over at Ed's house a few times, and
I immediately said Power Week because it just sounds like something that'd be like, I'm from Kentucky, and so when we hear things like Power Week, it's always like a monster truck pull or something like that.
sounds about right.
Yeah.
Kind of the mentality
Power
that.
Week like for you?
The first several that I went to were fantastic because I was part of the outer order and didn't really mingle with the inner order stuff at all.
Yeah.
And then once I got into Portal and 5-6, Power Week started kind of going downhill.
I'll avoid Portal and 5-6.
So,
like I told Edward, I'm totally fine in Venus right now. I'll stay here for this particular incarnation, and we'll talk later.
Well, in that order, it was more just the drama that happened because of the hierarchy.
Yeah.
And it was the hierarchy there was unfortunately toxic.
Yeah.
And the one good thing that I'll say about the head at the time was that he was very good at surrounding himself with wonderful people, which provided a buffer. And so there's people like, Ed, for example, who has always been just an amazing person.
Oh, thank you.
But,
I stole his outfit. See?
It's not brown.
Oh, it's blue. It's blue. Oh, yeah, his brown robe. Yeah.
He always had that stupid brown robe.
This is for the people who have a recurring nightmare of going into the sanctum sanctorum within their own hearts and opening the inner pastos and finding Robert Zink there, so they can have another person with the same outfit to maybe kind of like show that it's not the face, it's the outfit, it's the uniform.
Kind of replace it with a good memory. Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
It seems like, as a psychologist, it seems like a lot of the experiences involving both occult stuff and psychedelics triggers part of the brain that's related to imprinting in infancy and in toddlerhood. Like we stop imprinting after a certain age when we're no longer children. I mean, having that really deep visceral memory of things. And psychedelics help people have those. Traumatic experiences is another thing that causes. I mean, PTSD is basically these really hard imprints from a traumatic experience. Making love, falling in love, that's definitely an imprint scenario that, like, it pretty much triggers all this very primal attachment schema in the brain. I'm an educated hit. What can I say?
Well, if you look at some of those studies that they've been doing over in England primarily, but I think there's been some in France and Germany as well, on psilocybin, one of the things that they're discovering is that it helps the brain create new pathways, which is something that it's not very good at doing. So it actually gets people out of ruts that are caused by things like PTSD. And they're starting to discover that it can actually cure PTSD and things like that, because it
Some
gets
serious
you
medical
out of that.
universities are doing this.
Yeah. Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Wonderful, crazy stuff.
Well, what I've been thinking lately is the kind of feeling of collective death that a lot of people are experiencing, whether they know consciously or unconsciously, kind of about the apocalypse timeline that's very real according to JPL environmental scientists. But there's a sort of collective mourning, and I think that psychedelics could really be important for people in kind of dealing with that, and kind of finding a sense of transcendence or a connection to the all that is.
Yeah.
Do you use your psychedelics in your work? I know it's been important in mine.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to it in any way. I just haven't. Maybe at some point.
Yeah, personally, I usually don't combine the two so directly, but they kind of end up touching each other. Even if I do mushrooms over here and I do ritual magic over here, the interplay between them has produced poetry and things like that. When I was young, back when I knew you the first time, probably 98, I took LSD and spent the night in my temple. And what I discovered was it was sort of pointless. I mean, I went through a process for sure. Hey, brother, we got one more. It looks like he's still coming in.
All right.
Welcome.
We'll have to locate him in the algorithm machine.
Yeah, we got a full Beatles. I'll be Ringo. You guys can fight over the other three.
Have you guys seen the footage?
No,
I haven't yet. I want
crap.
to.
It's like it's sad on one hand because you're watching a breakup in real time,
Oh yeah.
but it's beautiful being on the inside of the genius that when they actually got together, the four of them was so much stronger than any one of them as an individual.
Absolutely.
I mean, they were an egregore, for all practical purposes.
Are we talking about us or are we talking about the Beatles?
Both.
The Beatles,
Yes.
both, and our fellowship invoking the Beatles.
Love it.
Yay.
We were talking
Yay.
about the use of psychedelics in one's occult work.
Yeah, you don't want to do that if you're following anyone.
Interesting.
Following like on the street or as a guru?
You don't want to do if you're like have a person in your life that needs you to follow their word.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Oh, you mean
Yeah.
like the authoritarian thing?
Yeah. You end up on your own path.
Totally.
Yeah. You end up on your own path even if you didn't mean to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Because one of the things that it would always kind of like, what can a earth banishing pentagram do against, the total dissolution of reality into, something else?
How are you going to keep them down on the farm once they've seen Carl Hungus?
Yeah,
But
they're like,
I do
Hmm?
I do find Golden Dawn magic on LSD to be particularly amazing though.
Oh, good. Oh,
Yeah.
I never really had much success with it, but I'm glad.
Oh God.
Mm. Yeah.
A lot of success for me. I started taking acid and doing pentagram and hexagram rituals and watchtower stuff at 16.
Oh, cool.
And
Wow.
like changed the trajectory of my life because all that stuff called auras and all that stuff that was subtle, I could see. So it was like, whoa, this is what drawing the pentagram does. This is what calling an archangel does. This is what it's like on these, more deeper states of when the perceptual filter is taken away. So that was really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Maybe the mistake I made was waiting until I was a proctor, because then I had a lot of double think about, should I be doing this? Is this bad? What would they say at the temple if they saw me doing this? So it's, if I had maybe done that at 16 instead of joining the Golden Dawn, that might have been a good way to go.
And those are most certainly blocks to disillusion.
Yeah.
Right?
Whether you're on acid or not. Yeah.
Absolutely. Whether you're on acid or not.
Yeah.
Best way to keep people in line is to keep them guilty. Huh?
Yeah.
I'll show you my altar real fast. I have
Ooh,
my own sort of
show and
hillbilly version of Golden Dawn stuff. So I have my garden over there, and here's some sweet potatoes I've been harvesting. And you walk out.
Now those are some sweet altars.
Yeah, there's a fire pit here. We're kind of on a fire watch right now in Southern California, so don't have anything burning in it. Here we are in Sagittarius. And it really does look cool when there's a fire in there, and especially if you're on psychedelics, because you have the microcosm in the middle, and all the stumps are on the outside are marked with the planetary sigil. So you have the macrocosm
And you got the colors
on the outside. Yes, and I have the colors thanks to very honored Ed, as I used to call him.
I've always thought Golden Dawn color theory to be particularly marvelous.
Yeah, it's Pythagorean. I mean, it's real. It's a real pattern. If anything else, it's a beautiful algorithm machine.
Totally, I love that phrase.
And with the Isaac Newton is kind of one place where the old alchemy and the new science overlap in one human being. And he was the guy who insisted that he saw 7 colors coming out of the prism, because you got to have indigo, otherwise you don't have the 7 planets. So it's kind of nice to be able to kind of see that in there. Going, okay, I see you winking at me across the pages.
I'm just fascinated by the way that music overlays it, because you have 7 chromatic tones. The octave is 7 plus 1, you know, the return note, and then you have the 12 in the chromatic scale. You know, you have the pentad, you have the triad, and the original Pythagorean schools, you know, taught music, math, and astrology, I guess. And I came into it that way. I was a jaded ex-seminarian, and I was really grokking on the correspondences via Pythagoras. And then I met
What does a jaded ex-seminarian look like? Like, do you hang out by the back door smoking cigarettes with the other jaded seminarians, or
well,
No, he's got
you're
his
like
bowl,
making
see?
fun of the other ones who are like
there's
taking
two
it
things
serious?
that result from being a jaded ex-seminarian. One of them was psilocybin Sundays.
That's pretty
Ooh,
cool.
like Sunday, like chocolate Sunday, or Sunday like
No.
the day Sunday, or are we talking both?
It's church
Thank you
plus
for
mushrooms.
asking. It's both. It's definitely both. And a couple of us that were taking this neurology course at the same time in the psych program, we were studying like the Gnostic rituals, and they were using, you know, variations of mushrooms in their beverages, and you know, cannabis, which they used in the Holy of Holies, they got from the Scythians, and actually, I think opium was usually an ingredient in soma, but I think that was more in Persia. But so we started doing it. We started going to this Episcopalian church, and it's like an old school high church Episcopalian. You know, it looks like Harry Potter and stuff. And holy crap, hearing that choir in that conch shell of a building on mushrooms and seeing the sun come through the stained glass. Wow.
Wow.
It's the way the Gnostics did it, you know?
You
And we were the
that's
builders
a
of the
party.
Adytum.
Yeah, no, that's a party.
Yeah.
Well, you end up partying with your ancestors, because that's the vision I kept having. One of the most profound hallucination visions I had, I was holding the liturgy sheet, you know, that everybody reads from when they say, "Peace be unto you and thanks be unto God," and all that stuff. And
All the good stuff.
I saw the words crawling across, the letters crawling across the page like little insects and going into my veins.
Oh,
And like the liturgy was going into my bloodstream, and it was like the logos, right?
Whoa.
And then I had this kind of like revelation about, you know, the other side of the veil and the wheel that turns, and there's half the people on this side that are like here, and half the people there, the church beyond, or the church visible and the church invisible, but the wheel is kind of rotating between them, and the rituals are how we fellowship with those on the other side, you know.
Wow.
At the time I was, you know, dealing with a lot of death, you know, just like last year, and it was a very therapeutic experience, I've got to say. So that's one angle from the jaded seminarian. I ended up calling that Gonzo Theology. I have a YouTube page that anybody wants to follow my shenanigans. But the other one was kind of this intense form of activism. You know, I ended up, you know, meeting a lot of anarchists, you know, and Catholic workers, and getting involved in kind of the hard left here in Southern California, you know, anti-fascist probably.
Well, sometimes you're the
You
only
mean the
one.
real fascists? I'm just kidding.
When the Trumps when the Trumpies have a rally, this guy shows up wearing all black with his Antifa flag by himself, and just stands there looking at them until they come up and they're like, "Should I punch you, or should I?" And then he engages them in discourse.
I had a crowbar in my pants just in case. But I'll
That's
tell you
helpful.
guys,
There's a joke in there somewhere.
no, that was true.
A few.
I was being literal. I'm from Kentucky, so I'm very much a Second Amendment leftist. When I got done with seminary, I guess I was just a conventional Democrat, democratic socialist maybe. Around the time of Occupy, that's when I became more of definitely a socialist. And after Trump got elected, I just went full on Marxist, Leninist, Maoist.
There was a Stalin minute there too.
Yeah. I still, have my Stalinistic moments, but so
We all do. It's okay.
so Trump had just gotten elected, right? I mean, can you guys remember where you were the moment you
Yeah.
heard on the TV
Oh,
or
I remember
radio?
the exact moment.
Yeah.
Like, I'm curious. Tell me
I
about
was sitting in front of the television, and then I went to the bathroom to throw up.
Yeah, wow. What was that for you, brother?
I had gone to Disneyland to try to keep my mind off of the election, and I overheard people at Disneyland. They were happy Trump was winning, and that was still the transition time for me, because
Orange County is the Florida of California.
right, yeah, I didn't realize. I thought that, I think like a lot of people during the Obama times, I didn't live in, haven't spent a lot of time in the South. I did go to in Missouri at one point, and then I kind of saw like, oh my God, what is this? Just being surrounded by people saying all kinds of things I wouldn't say in polite society.
Massive Jesus billboards every 50 feet on the freeway.
Yeah, and a whole lot of racism, and a big old Confederate flag there with the American flag at the airport. I was like,
So,
what is this?
what you're seeing is more America.
Yeah. But I didn't even realize, I didn't have that in my head that existed. So I was seeing the Trump supporters as the fringe weirdos. I think like a lot of people were back then. And so that day at Disneyland, overhearing people who were so, happy that he was winning. And so I was on my way home in the car, and I Googled, pulled up on Google and saw he was the projected winner. And fuck, oh man, what a weird time. Now I'm in India, and I think that the two events are very connected. Like,
wow.
Getting the pull to. I always wanted to come to this part of the world, but then Trump being the president of my country kind of like was like, okay, I have nothing to stay for. I can talk to you guys.
The one upside about him getting elected is he was so pugnaciously bold about his opinions that a lot of the activists, a lot of the activists that were just kind of like bleeding into the wallpaper were like, fuck this, game on. I can do that too, And so right after they passed the Christmas tax bill with Stephen Mnuchin, I was doing a winter solstice ritual at a Golden Dawn temple in Altadena. Altadena has a long occult history, with JPL scientists and all kinds of weird stuff. So we're in this Golden Dawn temple, and I prepared a pot of soma. And
you mean soma?
Yeah, more or less. It was my version. There was a lot of psilocybin mushrooms, cannabis oil from the plant I'd grown, or just like cannabis butter from the plant I'd grown, and then the spiced apple cider. And it was warmed on the stove, and it was so good. And we all drank some of that before going into the temple. And processing it afterwards, I was talking to one of the guys who's in like a local psych rock band, and we're all talking about kind of the intention that we went in with. And one of my intentions was social justice related to Jesus going into the temple and chasing out the money changers, and thinking about how the Christmas tax bill that Mnuchin and Trump created was just a complete giveaway to the rich assholes and a takeaway from the poor, the widow, and the orphan and the immigrant, and everybody that Jesus said, this is what you're actually supposed to be focusing on. The sheep and the goats parable. As much as you've done in the least of these, you've done unto me. Visiting in prison, food to the hungry, welcoming to a stranger, and all the stuff that is the exact opposite of Trump. Like Trump, by the most fundamentalist, literal Christian standards, is the Antichrist. He is the Lord of Mammon. He shits in a gold toilet,
So I have a request, if that's okay.
What's that?
could we keep our discussions of that person specifically to a minimum? I don't mind talking about the events around that person,
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about that person specifically.
Yeah.
See,
so-
people like that tend to be attention magnets. And
Right,
all
right,
of a sudden
right.
we spend the
Whoa.
next hour just
Okay.
talking about how much we hate this person. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
I'm
like,
gonna
yeah.
wrap this up.
But this was
I'm
about
gonna wrap this
Mnuchin
up in 2
anyway.
minutes. Yeah, that's a good point. That is a very good point. He's gotten into all of our heads longer than he should have. But so I'm processing this with my friend. What do I want to do with the energy of Saturn, and to really strike a blow to the center of power, the lords of Mammon? And this gift, this tax bill had just gotten passed, and we're all talking about our signs, like just like at my altar here, I like to when I'm doing work with people, I like to find out where they are in the cosmic clock here. The microcosm on the inside.
is that an iron
macro-
cauldron you have in the middle?
It's the fire pit.
Okay,
But then
cool.
I have the planets around the outside, and so as it turned out, it's like, okay, I'm a Capricorn, so I'm ruled by Saturn, and Saturnalia, and winter solstice is a thing, and it's also historically it was a time when the commoners gave the barons the finger, and so it came upon me to do the alchemical work of Negredo. And being from Kentucky, the closest place I could find some Negredo was my friend's horse barn. And so I filled a big box full of horse manure, just beneath the amount of horse manure that would be considered dangerous because it could be used to make fertilizer bombs. And I wrapped it in Christmas paper with a card that said, "Dear Misters Mnuchin and Trump, we are returning the gift of the Christmas tax bill. It's complete and utter horse shit. Signed, the American people." And I found out where he lived, where Mnuchin lived, because he has two houses out here, one in Bel Air and one in Beverly Hills. And I did 2 boxes. And so I drop them off, and I'm just amped up because in my heart, my mind, I'm like doing the work of the Lord. I'm like Samson, the Ebionite, pushing the pillars over, of the Philistines and whatnot. And I come back home and I turn on the TV. There's helicopters circling his mansion in Bel Air, and this whole squad of Secret Service agents crawling around on their hands and knees in a pile of horse shit, digging around. But
you took credit. You called up and said,
yeah,
"Hey, by the way, I did it."
Yeah, I wanted to get ahead of the narrative. I'm like, I'm not going to do something that risky and waste the fucking platform.
Yeah.
And so I got it gave me kind of a platform to really throw my voice out there. And it's like, wow, that ritual really, really fucking worked. I mean, gosh, so much happened after that. What was you guys' life like? Well, okay, never mind. Trump, see, there I go. He who shall not be named. Edward, I'll let you take it from here.
Darth
so we don't give
Cheeto.
that guy any more attention. Yeah.
Well, I love your stories. I was going to ask you about that one, and there's 2 more.
Okay. I love telling them.
There's I don't know which one first. Okay, how about Psilocybin Sunday, the American evangelical one?
Okay. I grew up in Paducah, Kentucky. My dad is a Pentecostal preacher. So culturally, that's kind of my background. And theologically, I couldn't be any further from that. Although methodologically, that's kind of what Gonzo theology is about, throwing yourself headfirst into these relatively Pentecostal experiences, losing all sense of shame and just seeing what happens. In a way, it's almost like an act of, it's an act of psychomagic or a political theater, so one of the institutions of Mammon that always bothered me the most is Trinity Broadcasting Network. It was a televangelist that would cater to all these shut-ins in their trailers all over the Ballard County and they have nothing to do but sit there and watch these preachers, and they end up sending their welfare, their social security check to this dumbass who already has 3 private jets, you know? And so I was like, well, how can I speak to that? And I kind of do some thinking and meditating and praying and asking the Lord, and, you know, channeling Mars a little bit. And my good buddy Samael, and it came to me to go to a live taping of Trinity Broadcasting Network in Orange County, where the Joel Osteen was, no, not Joel Osteen.
My favorite preacher.
Yeah, Joel Osteen. He was there live with the son of the founder of Trinity Broadcasting Network, just this sleazebag used car salesman of a televangelist, right? And so I put on the shirt that says Jesus versus Mammon, a t-shirt, but I put a dress shirt over it. And I don't know why I felt like I needed to, but I did mushrooms before going in too, just because I just felt like it was kind of, it was kind of in keeping with my way of doing Gonzo theology. And I was able to speak in that sort of cultural language when I got to the door, and the lady with the clipboard is like, "What church you from, son?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't really go to a church out here, but I'm with my friend here. He's a pastor at Lighthouse Assembly of God, and I grew up in church, but, you know, I'm just kind of hanging out with him today." And she's like, "Well, bless your heart. I hope you come back to Jesus." And she lets me in, you know. And I was with this philosophy professor friend of mine who also does Psilocybin Sundays. And in my writings, he's just the professor. And he was my getaway driver. But like during a key moment, right, when Joel Osteen was marching out to the live game show music sort of lights and things, I stood up, ripped off my shirt, and I had Jesus versus Mammon, and I began preaching hellfire and brimstone like Jesus in the temple who threw out the money changers and smashed their shit, and until security dragged me out, kicking and screaming. It was glorious.
Well, what did you say?
Oh, well, I he pointed to a sign out the door when he was dragging me out that said, interrupting religious service is a misdemeanor in Orange County. Right.
But I mean, what did you shout to Joel?
Oh, to Joel Osteen.
Yeah.
You know what? I completely went off script. I had this whole thing prepared, and I started yelling that old women around the country are sending you their social security checks. You're a con artist. You know, you cannot serve both God and mammon. And, you know, and whitewash sepulcher and the whole works. You know?
Oh, yeah.
It felt good.
Then the other one, of course, was how did you end up in jail, brother?
Oh man, that's just you know, it's bound to
that's
happen.
Just a beautiful story. I mean, you know, it's just this beautiful story of standing up for what's right.
That one was not on like last 2020 was just brutal.
Oh no,
like,
you've been to more than once. Yeah, I meant the one where you were driving and you turned around and then they tried to get you for making an illegal U-turn when you were trying to save a man's life from the police.
Well, I went out there just to get out of the city because like I'd been like shot up with rubber bullets and just, you know, it was getting really aggressive, and some of the fascist Proud Boys were starting to target some of the fascists at home. That were starting to target some of the anti-fascists at home, and so like I'm having to really like talk.
Not to mention Secret Service coming to your place of employment and your house.
Yeah, no, that's
was
an
good.
Important
Story.
That just started happening when he did the Mnuchin thing and never stopped.
Yeah. Well, no, it stopped, I think.
Oh, okay. You're still on a list for sure, though. They'll be watching this. Yeah. Hi, Secret Service.
I can't buy any firearms.
Great. Now I'm going to be on a list again. There's actually a Power Week I couldn't go to because I was on a list.
Oh, no.
Power Week!
We'll get to that story. I want to know how you got on a list.
Yeah, how did you get on a list?
So I've got a degree in comparative religion. Part of getting a degree in comparative religion is taking classes about multiple religions. So 9/11 happened, and I was already signed up for a independent study course in Islam. So I took my independent study course in Islam and got put on the terrorist watch list
Oh,
for studying
signing
Islam.
up for a freaking course?
Yeah,
mm,
it was part of my degree.
oh my gosh.
And I didn't find out about it until a couple years later,
How'd you find
because
out?
I was working at a locksmith. And in order to be a locksmith, you have to have this like huge security background check done, because they're teaching you how to break into people's houses.
Yeah.
And the local background check came through just fine, and the state background check came through just fine. And then it got to the federal background check, and the Department of Homeland Security called my boss and said, no, we're not going to let this guy, this can't pass because he's on a terrorist watch list.
Oh my gosh.
And thankfully,
Wait, what year was that?
2002.
Okay.
Thankfully, my boss had a higher clearance than the guy he was talking to at the Department of Homeland Security. So immediately asked for his boss and said, explained the whole situation about how the whole thing came about because I was taking a course on Islam and everything, because he knew my background. And he's like, look, I've been working with this guy forever. Fine, just push it through. Eventually they pushed it through it. Part of that, I got taken off of the watch list.
Oh, that's good.
But getting taken off of the watch list took a little while, because in 2002 is also when the Power Week that I went to, or I wanted to go.
Power Week.
And I get to come through here. I'm like, why not? And they're like, nope, computer says no.
Oh
And they
my
wouldn't
gosh.
give me any kind of reason. They're just like, nope, you can't come through. You've been flagged. You can't fly.
Oh my gosh. It's ridiculous.
Oh,
So you missed.
yeah. What exactly happened in the week of 2002? What about? But no, crazy stuff.
Yeah. So, Brother Silence, real quick, could you tell us what happened when you told the cop not to shoot the young man in San Bernardino?
Oh yeah, it was the summer of 2020, and I was all torn up, from all the, anti-fascist, punch outs of the Proud Boys and Black Lives Matter protests and eating rubber bullets and stuff. And so I'm going to go out to my favorite spot in Yeshua Tree, this beautiful desert we have in Southern California. If you've ever get the chance, it's a wonderful place to camp and look at the sky, and it's a wonderful place to trip. I like to sleep in a certain cave when I go there. But when I go there, I get down to business. I I fast and pray, for a good period of time, and I try to spend at least 24 hours in one spot in a cave and just kind of watching the way the light changes over the course of the day, and mushrooms and lots of good conversations with my ancestors, like Uncle Captain Billy. That's a whole other story. So I'm going out there pretty much for therapeutic purposes. I'm not out there to get in any trouble. And I go into town the day after I'm done, and I'd had a wonderful vision quest, and I'm going to get some coffee at this joint, and I'm driving out of town, heading out 29 Palms Highway, and I see this little black hipster boy, and he's kind of queer looking, and he's holding this drum, and he's beating a drum with one hand and holding this parchment with the other and reciting this poem. And I'm kind of a Burning Man guy, and when I see performance art, I'm like, yeah, do it, brother. And so I'm kind of looking at him as I'm driving and thinking, maybe I should go around there and check it out. And all of a sudden, 3 cop cars pulled up on that kid like he was John Dillinger. And I'd been in involved in some protests where I saw some really brutal police brutality, and literally having to like get out of the way to pull a woman free, and that's how I got shot with a rubber bullet, because they were just covering her. And I'm like, fuck no. And I went to push him out of the way and yank her free, and that's how I got shot in the chest. But so I'd flip a U-turn, and I'm like, hell no, I'm not gonna watch another goddamn murder. Everybody that saw those videos got traumatized for good reason too, because that's just been happening for a long time. The KKK has been actively infiltrating the police force and the U.S. military for years now. It's documented now. And growing up in Kentucky, I saw that shit firsthand. And so I pull up and I roll down my window, and I just smoked a bowl too. Like I got my coffee and smoked a bowl. Enjoy driving home and Bob Dylan. Oh no, here we go again. And so I yell out the window, "Don't shoot that boy! You're not going to shoot this boy on my watch. I'm filming this." Blah blah blah. I forget what I said. And when a big steroided out sheriffs comes stomping over, "What'd you say to me, boy?" And yanks me out of the car. Like there's this weird twist thing, that they do, and the car, and there I was at the kid in dark, singing jailhouse songs, and they let me go without my laces, and I walked a mile back through the desert just to get to a payphone because my phone was dead. And that was my experience with the San Bernardino County sheriffs.
Oh man.
I live in Minneapolis. The George Floyd murder actually happened in my neighborhood.
Holy shit.
The cup food, there's a good chance that I've probably met him at some point, just in passing. So yeah, the riots here, more central Minneapolis from there.
Wow, were you out there on the street?
For a little bit, yes. And then we got some intelligence that white supremacists were trying to burn down our neighborhood. So from that point on, I was keeping watch over the neighborhood. We had 24-hour shifts going, scaring away Ku Klux Klan, 3 Percenters, Proud Boys, Boogaloo Brothers.
Did any of them show?
All just keeping them out of, oh yeah. We ran a number of cars and trucks out of there. There was one car that they found that had 7 Molotov cocktails in the back of it with no plates.
God bless you. I'm glad you're okay, and I'm glad you're safe.
So yeah, it was crazy time.
Oh man.
And it was the biggest thing that I saw that was just infuriating was these extraordinary peaceful protests of people just gathering and the police just lighting them up. We'd be there, everybody, just being present to show solidarity and stuff. And then the tear gas would start going, and then the rubber bullets would start flying. It was just insane.
Yeah.
And there was one guy that actually caught the police department slashing tires of people that were at protests during the day. So we had the curfews in place, and about half an hour, 15 minutes before the curfews would go out, he would go out and start slashing people's tires so that they had to be out past curfew so that they could then arrest them for being out past curfew.
Shit. And they caught the guy?
The way it got caught, the article that I read was basically somebody, I think he was from internal affairs from a department in Indiana, who had caught it and wrote an article about it. And I think basically they all got reported to IA. So, but it's cops.
So I have a friend in San Francisco during a protest out there, out in actually not San Francisco, I'm sorry, up in Seattle. She was at a protest in Seattle, and I saw her while she was on her camera, because I was here at home. I was watching feeds of people that were giving live feeds of this material. on her live feed, it showed her going to her car and showing cops slashing her tires.
They're doing it in Seattle
Like
too.
it was on the live feed. And she goes up and she's like, she starts talking with them like, and she's starting to have a panic attack and dealing with them. And it was just, you know, it kind of, people's perspective all comes down to evidence. And so it's so important that we're sharing people's firsthand evidence, witnesses that were there, because what voice do witnesses have? It's like they don't have much of a voice. And so these things are so important. So I'm so happy that this gathering is happening and people are telling their firsthand stories of what encounters with police are, and the KKK and these other right-wing extremist organizations that do have power, and they have had power for a long time in our country, since the beginning. So it's not like this is new.
Yeah.
Right? We're just uncovering what's here.
Yeah.
Then they're
And so
spinning
that was
it.
the function of Trump. Right?
Yeah.
In a weird way. Yeah. I mean, apocalypse doesn't just mean chaos, it means unveiling. And
It means
in a
unveiling.
way, he ripped the curtain back.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you to the pastor, to the Lutheran pastor of the Church of Saints and Sinners in Colorado, for saying that. I saw her talk where she says just that. Apocalypse is the pulling away of the veil, just as you said, Eli. Right? And so I think it's important that the perspective we take, although all these things are happening, it's like we have to take a step back and say, okay, what's happening on a more longer term platform here? You know, I have people that come to me through social media. I've had this happen 3 times over the last 5 years, where a person will message me and say, hey, you're white, you're privileged, you're a man, what are you doing with it? I don't think you're doing enough. And they start guilting me, they'll start getting upset, they'll start swearing at me, and they're unloading their anger at me. It's like, so what I have to do as a white person is I have to sit back and wonder, well, am I doing enough? And there's no other person I can ask other than my black allies or my brown allies who are my friends. Hey, am I doing enough? And I get feedback from them, talk with them, be like, okay, I'm having this experience. What do I do? And so then the idea of real allyship comes up, and that comes up in personal friendship, right? And building these networks of personal friendship. So the first idea is telling stories, raising awareness. And the second is not raising awareness, but what comes after raising awareness, building networks, building social networks. And here's like a long-term plan that works. So we want to think longer-term plan with our building of friendships.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I didn't want to step in.
Oh, no, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you I mean, what do you visualize some of those networks looking like once the dust settles a little bit on this transition from Pisces to Aquarius?
Well, first thoughts in my head is, well, since we're talking about politics and KKK and these things, these issues happening in the United States, is we have to look to our black brothers and sisters, our brown brothers and sisters, and see what they've been doing for decades upon decades upon decades.
Right.
And see what they've been doing, what their views are, ask them questions. You know, like Black Panthers in the United States. Like we just had that movie that just came out about Fred Hampton and Fred Hampton Jr. And it's like, we look at those organizations. We say, how are they living today? Because they are, those networks of relationships living today. They most certainly are.
Yeah.
And how are they strong? Why are they strong? Because why? Trust, fidelity, friendship, personal intimacy, right? These are the things that the KKK does not have. Right? These are the things that these organizations that are fascist do not have. It's just hard.
Another place to look, where I've had a little bit more success in finding information, at least, because a lot of the information on like the early years of the Black Panthers is hard to get your hands on, is look at a lot of the anarchist stuff. Look at the anarchist community networks, because they exist all throughout the country, all throughout the world, and they have for centuries. I mean, you go back to World War II, a lot of the anti-fascist movements at the time were formed around these same types of community networks. And a lot of times the way they've started is they'll start with like 1 or 2 people in an area who have similar ideas, and then it'll grow a little bit more from there. And then it seems like for most of these groups, about 13 or 14 tends to be the max. So when they start getting too much bigger than that, they'll split off into 2 different groups.
Yeah.
It's like an
That's
edit.
the
Size of the
bigger the
witch's
split-off.
coven, isn't it?
I think there's a connection there.
Huh.
12 disciples is
but
one too
then
many.
you'll have 2 groups that are self-sustaining, but also connected to each other.
Mm.
And then when those groups get bigger, they'll split. And now you've got 4 groups that are all connected to each other that can all help connect everything else. And so you end up with these wonderful networks that are all designed around the idea of mutual aid.
Right. So what we see here is mutual aid combined with political work, which comes from working together multi-generationally, not just what can I accomplish in my life, but what can we do together for the next generation, right, to carry forward. Right. And then we have spirituality mixed in here too.
That's
right?
where,
like ways of coming together, and I'm talking about like the traditions that come from these places like Lukumi, Kimbanda, Umbanda, Candomblé, like these traditions that are more from the disenfranchised and help people come together, find community together, and basically praise God together in a way that's connected with what they feel to be true, and helps forward a sense of identity, right? That's not been lost. It's been even reforged, right?
Yeah. When I was camping out with a group of anarchists beside the LA County Jail and ICE Detention Center, and I didn't camp out there every night, but we try to like get everybody kind of rotating, so there was always people on the ground, and we had like a food station, like we're feeding all the other unhoused folks that are camping in the neighborhood, and being a presence, we successfully blocked off half of the exit ways, got arrested a couple of times with a cool local Episcopalian priest. But these kids, these young folks, I said, I'm about to turn 50, so a lot of the folks I work with are way younger, and some of these young folks had been to Standing Rock, and the experiences that they described from being out there were so profound. And they would sometimes lead us in some of the ceremonies that they used to do that was based on Native American rituals. And some of the Chumash people that were part of the American Indian movement were part of this as well. And they would kind of lead sometimes. And they would start every meeting, you were on Chumash soil. Actually, it's Tongva. You're on Tongva soil. And then they would do like this invocation. It was one of the things that really kind of helped me keep my humanity amidst all the anger and chaos of that year.
It's a very powerful statement.
What I'm seeing when I look through, the not so magic glowing screen mirror of the universe, whether I'm looking at yoga communities, New Age communities, occult communities, Thelemic communities, traditional Golden Dawn communities, I find either a total avoidance of anything political, or they lean toward the right. And I think it's we were talking about lazy connections, like someone could say, well, I'm in the Golden Dawn and we're kind of patriarchal and hierarchical and traditional, and those are 3 buzzwords that apply also to the GOP, so I guess I'll vote GOP. And then that's one level, like the lukewarm gravitate toward that, and then they become KKK adjacent. There's like the KKK, the neo-Nazis.
So lazy connections.
Yeah.
Lazy connections is lazy logic, essentially.
Yeah, and
Okay, not lazy reasoning.
bias. I mean, a cognitive bias toward peace and not stress, which is the big thing. You know, like get rid of anything toxic. And so if you're in a bubble, if you're creating a bubble or a circle, an LBRP, if you will, or whatever, and you're saying I am sovereign, you know, there's that word that gets thrown into the mix. I am the master of my world. Therefore, I guess I'm a libertarian, you know, I mean, and so like I said, lazy connections where things just sort of seem to resemble what they think that they're leaning toward. And I think that people, because they know that if they were to lean that way, then they would be going against their 5 friends over here. And I mean, by if they were to go left, if they were to go activist, if they were to start thinking, well, now maybe we should like think about the systemic issues, then they would be going against their 10 best friends over here, or everyone else in their coven or temple, and they would be giving themselves stress instead of giving themselves peace. But I think that there might be at least one listener, and if there's one, then that's enough. I mean, that's worth it. Then this was all worth it. If there's one person who just sort of kind of leans that way, but a little voice is saying, like, there might be 1 or 2 people out there that kind of lean, they go along with their conservative friends because they don't want to you know, make waves, or they don't want to like upset people or whatever. And
okay,
and so
here's the thing. Could we then ask ourselves a question here?
Yeah.
What is a cult? What is an order? Right? The word cult has a negative connotation to it. The word cult has this idea that it's something that you follow mindlessly. And the idea of an order is it's a group of people that think for themselves and are able to bring logic and creative, you know, critical reasoning to the table, be able to address things in a way, work them out, because we're all adults here, right?
Yeah.
So that's my definition of an order. And a call, talk about the different, what I'm in a cult, just because I like to. The cult I'm in, though, anybody can bring anything that's a problem to the table. And so we talk about, because we're all adults here. But anyway,
I like to think of cult as being a petri dish of culture. You know, it's kind of the root word of culture. And so a cult is a group that's kind of looking at reality through a different reality tunnel, to use the Robert Anton Wilson, you know, thing. And in a way, Marxist-Leninism is almost it's such a radically different way of thinking culturally. As I've been hanging out with my Black Panther brothers, I didn't realize that most of the original Black Panthers were explicitly Marxist-Leninist Maoists, and even some of the White Panthers, like High Thurman and that rock band MC5, their manager was one of the White Panthers. They were like basically white allies to the Black Panthers, and those are kind of my homies. But it's almost felt like a replacement for church in a weird way. I mean, somebody could possibly say that's not entirely healthy. You know, I grew up in church, and you know, it's very authoritarian on one level, but also incredibly democratic on the other, because anybody could walk up to the podium and say, "Hey, this is what's on my heart today." You know, almost like a Quaker meeting. And so, like when I'm sitting with those guys and we're talking, there is that kind of like shared vulnerability of like that builds kind of the trust. And when you're really in the trenches with somebody, you got to have that shared vulnerability. And it feels like almost more like there really is a deep spiritual component. My ancestor that I'm writing a book about was part of a similar group called at the start of the Civil War, and they were Quakers who gave up pacifism for Lent, because they were part of the Underground Railroad, and they were able to find thus far without shedding any blood. But because they had to free some people from a brothel that was fairly well armed, that's kind of how they started getting shooty, and they kind of became vigilantes after that. And they were like liberating mansions before the war even started, and turning it over, you know, to the workers, you know, to kind of to fill the old anarchist seize the means of production and whatnot. but they were some of them were Masons, and there was a group of Black Masons too, and around that time they were also part of the Underground Railroad. Like spiritually, in terms of egregore, most of the people that I'm reading about in my research that were part of the Underground Railroad were either Quakers or Masons. And there was a big network of, I guess, it was a place where men felt free to speak their mind freely back then, you know, and they use it. How much Rosicrucian stuff did they use in the average Masonic meeting anyway, Edward? I don't know a whole lot about Masons
Not much.
besides that.
Hmm.
There was a Black Masonic group called they also helped with the Red String Raiders, and they were very Egyptian, and Pascal Beverly Randolph is kind of part of that as well. He started a lodge in Nashville.
So you said something that I thought was very important, and that was people were allowed to ask questions.
Yeah.
Right. And that goes back to what BT was saying earlier about in experience of, you know, these Golden Dawn hierarchies, how people kind of just keep their mouths shut to just kind of follow order and just let things kind of, the hierarchy happen. And me having experience of being in an order like that twice, 2 different times, the yoga cult, and then how our parents would treat us when we bring a problem to them, and then to make us feel bad about that problem. It's like we don't like those experiences. So it's like needing to climb into my own psychology and dig out those pieces in me that had problems with my parents when they have a problem with me having a question, you know. Like a lot of people like hierarchy and they don't like asking questions and they like following suit because they like having a mom or dad around that can just be responsible for calling the shots. And that way they're not responsible for whatever happens. And it's like, that to me is not a good spiritual school. A good spiritual school is based on what, you know, BT was talking about earlier and what you brought up about these Masonic orders, you know, in the past, that you were free to bring up whatever problem you had because you're brought into the order. You're trusted. Because we trust you, we'll listen to you, right? And I think that's important for a functioning organism, right?
Well, I think kind of jumping off from that, one of the things that I found that's interesting about the order that I'm a part of now is it doesn't seem to have the same toxic relationships that we had in the old order. So, you know, the temple that I'm a part of now, we still have the 3 chief setup, but that's basically for teachings, you know, because the chiefs have been around longer, so they understand the teachings of the Golden Dawn and the temple specifically a little bit more. But when it comes to like the decision process of the temple makes them as a whole. You know, we actually talk about things. We interact with everybody and we find out what everybody thinks. And that comes down to even, you know, allowing new members to join. You know, when we go through the interview process starts off with mainly the chiefs, but the second interview that we have is anybody from the temple who wants to show up, so that everybody can kind of get a feel for the new person, make sure, hey, is this somebody that we feel like we can all get along with? You know, is this somebody that we feel like is going to mesh with the current egregore and move forward from there? So it's kind of this bizarre hybrid of the hierarchical structure that most people are accustomed to and a more, you know, in my opinion, anarchy type structure of, you know, everybody's on an equal playing field. You know, nobody's better than anybody else. Which is one of those things that in the older we used to talk about, but nobody ever actually did.
Exactly. It's a front, right?
Yeah. You know, and so I think that the Golden Dawn structure done properly can accomplish those same ends. you know, if you actually do what the teachings say to do, and you focus on the right things. I mean, I think anybody who's actually going through and doing the work will end up leaning left, personally.
I agree, and I think any order that is actually functioning properly will stay away from making political announcements, right?
Yeah.
And not
Or
indoctrinate
just
their
do the
members.
things.
And I think an order that's functioning properly, any member that has any issues or problems or questions should feel the freedom to bring them and voice them, talk about them, right?
Absolutely.
And if that's not regularly remembered, like, here we are again, just wanted to remind everyone, if you have any problems or anything on your mind, please bring them, talk with them about this, foster openness. If that's not readily talked about too with membership, then the atmosphere of whatever order person is in really needs to be checked, and it's up to each person to do it themselves. It's their own personal responsibility.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times where a lot of the problems start to develop within any organizational structure, whether it's an order structure or a Masonic structure or work structure or whatever, is people not bringing up the problems that they have or the questions that they have, or there's miscommunications and nobody bothers to say anything about it.
And that corrupts the seed, doesn't it?
Or there's like, I mean, on one level, I mean, taking a sort of Buddhist angle, there's the idea of compassion and there's the idea of wisdom. And in the sense of that, in this context, wisdom, the wisdom of knowing that none of this actually has any meaning and that it's all basically just ashes blowing in the wind, that's wisdom. But compassion is knowing that for practical purposes, we are here and we are, all we have, and we've got to look out for each other. And so what I see happening, not just in Buddhism, but in Golden Dawn and maybe some Thelemic circles as well, is this philosophic detachment disguised as wisdom, but but no compassion, and or compassion only for a certain select group of people like me, compassion for me and my family and people who look like me and have the same income and everything.
After practicing Buddhism now for a number of years, I have a similar experience of Western esotericism missing basic compassion practices. And it's such a cornerstone of spiritual work. We have to ask ourselves, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this spiritual work? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't end up for the elevation of suffering, right? For the freedom and liberation of being, of all beings, then why are you doing what you're doing? Like, that's where I've ended up with my compassion practice. And it's compassion and impermanence and a couple of other things that are found with Buddhism that are not present within a Western esotericism, kind of fills in the cracks and makes Western esotericism more available and more meaningful, at least in my experience.
Yeah, and the more compassionate sides of Christianity, or at least the teachings of Jesus, not just the sword flying out of his mouth in the book of Revelation.
Well,
I mean, there's that too.
Although that was pretty badass,
but that sword comes from compassion. I mean, in my mind, when you have compassion for your fellow brethren, you see, wrongdoing, the sword comes out, of course, but that's the right sword. That's the correct sword. The frustrating thing is how I see the fasci, they flip it all. They call us fascists, because we think that we all ought to, do something about how fucked it is. And then they say, you think you all oughta? Oh, that sounds very fascist. I just think that I wanna, and that means I'm free. And therefore, screw you. I'm like the Darth Cheeto, and it's a lazy, emotionally lazy, like just sort of going what's comfortable, in the
absolutely
moment.
Is. And the people who believe this stuff have been groomed over generations to believe it. We live in a country where our education system is poor. We do not receive classes in civics or critical thinking.
Oh God!
Right, and so And so our parents and their parents been groomed for decades with just relentless media and constant programming. I watch my parents watch Fox News every morning, and I sit down and watch with them sometimes, and I listen to the kind of rhetoric coming through and how it's just filled with logical thinking that is meant to groom people and their, like what you say, lazy emotions. You know, it's like we're talking a lot about lazy Christianity in this discussion too. You know, my parents claim to be evangelical. They sit and watch Joel Osteen every Sunday. They both vote for Trump. I watch it every day because I live with them. You know, and it's like, I can't blame them for thinking this because their brain has been groomed this way for decades to think this way. And if I say anything challenging, they have an emotional response.
Yeah.
So how do you talk to them like on a daily? Because I know with my parents,
Because we don't
Man.
talk about it. We just don't
Okay.
talk about it.
Mm.
I love them for who they are, because in the moment when it counts, which is when my dad talks to someone who's Black, when my dad talks to someone who's poor, when my mom has the same kind of confrontation, they're good people. And so it's like, in those moments, that's what counts for me. You know,
Right.
basic ideology and what they feed their brain is, it's like, I don't have any control over that, you know, and I can't blame them for bias is a big thing. People want to believe what they want to believe, and they seek information that supports what they want to believe. It's just what we do as humans. And so it's like the good word of Christ, the good word of Jesus that you're talking about, Eli. It's yes, we need to continue talking about these things to people who have the ear to listen. Because the people who think they're right, and they're not going to think any other way.
Yeah.
And it's just how the world is. And so we talk about compassion, with compassion for them in the sense where they're having the experience that they're having. And the only thing I can do for them is do my practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only that's part of compassion practice in Buddhism is we end up where, God, I wish I could help them. And then we finish, I wish I could help them with, the way I can help them is with my practice. And we end there. Right? Because if I'm radiating peace, if I'm in a sense of connection, not lazy connection, but real connection, if I know the truth,
Yeah.
I can sit in that and be it. And sometimes that's just the work to do, you know?
Good times.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I think there's like a two-prong, at least probably three, because there's usually three prongs to when they say prongs. But anyway, I'm only thinking of two right now. So I guess it's a salad fork. Anyway, or what are those things called? Doesn't matter. Yeah, there's that internal process of doing the work and keeping the right focus. And then also, nothing will change. I mean, I'm being a total hypocrite. I ran away. I'm totally never mind, see ya, I'm going to be on an island somewhere. But
You went to heaven, my friend.
Speaking
you
as
didn't
a
run
total
away. You
hypocrite.
just got taken to a different dimension.
Speaking as a total hypocrite. No, without some kind of activism, some kind of planned efforts beyond voting, plus voting, nothing will change. And our brother Yates put it very well. Of course, I know we all know the quote, but it's the worst are full of passionate, the best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. And it's a poem about the end of the world. And
Wow.
so I mean, that's what the problem is it takes a Darth Cheeto to see the left actually get out into the streets, because the rest of the time they're like, I just don't have the energy. Plus, I mean, I noticed like different slices of left, like Hillary versus Bernie supporters or something, like it's just divide and conquer. Like we can't do anything when we're divided amongst ourselves, like the Judean People's Front, and the People's Front of Judea, can't unite against the Romans,
I introduced my sons to The Life of Brian a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
They really liked it, although sometimes they don't always go to the most appropriate scene. It's like, oh shit, I forgot about that scene, it was funny though. They love like what's the Holy Grail, and I was doing my Zoom classes with the Panthers, and we're going through Huey Newton books and Fred Hampton speeches and stuff, and Max is out there, and he has autism, by the way, and he's whittling on these sticks. He's making these Harry Potter wands, and I'm making a comment, and he looks up at me and goes, "There you go, bringing class into it again." From the anarchist peasants, the anarcho-syndicalists is like, they love to go around saying, "How do you know he's a king? He's the only one who's got shit all over him." They love saying shit now, like he's 11 and like shit is his power word.
Yeah, so words are also really important. What I've noticed with my parents and watching them is there's certain words that if I say, it will immediately emotional trigger them, right? If I say the word anarchist, boom,
Right.
I've lost it.
Yeah, that's
If
when
I
we
say
lost
the
a
word
lot of our
socialist,
audience when we started
boom.
using that word, I think. Yeah.
All right.
Right. If I use the word socialist, boom,
Yeah.
I've lost any kind of reasoning or any kind of meeting of minds. So it's like learning to talk with people that have been, soaking in this minefield for so long is kind of like walking through a minefield, like a word
How do you
minefield.
manage things?
One of the things that you can bring up there that I found to be at least a little bit helpful in at least in like planting a seed without having to use one of those scary words like socialism or Marxism or anything like that is Acts chapter 4, starting at verse 32. It describes the early church, and it is like full-on communist.
Yeah, it is.
It talks about somebody selling their house and giving the money to the community, and anything that a person owns is owned by the community. I mean, it's full-on communist, and so it's one of those fun things that you can bring up without having to use one of those scary words. That I found helpful, at least. I like trying to find things that are actually in the Bible to bring them
stuff.
back to. That's one of the big ones that I've been using lately.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask my dad about that.
Yeah, let's see. That'll be interesting.
A couple of the things that I've been coming back to a lot lately are all from Acts. There's the Acts chapter 4, starting at 32 for the communism. And then Acts 15 gets into a lot of the laws of Leviticus and stuff don't actually apply anymore. And so when they're going off on their rants against anything that happens to be brought up in Leviticus that they don't like in the moment, that's another fun thing to bring up.
But I want to eat lobster. You
Thankfully,
can.
Acts 15 says you can.
Yeah.
Well,
But because of that, I can also get tattoos.
Yeah.
And
I can love whoever I want.
And you ask, Eli, how can I live with them? And the main reason is because all that stuff, like what BT was saying, it doesn't matter. It's like what matters is my state. What matters is if I'm in a state of compassion and presence, right? If I'm in this place of awakened awareness and I'm tending to how I feel about the moment, right? And so living with them is a great test for me with that. I've been able to work out so much anger and so much arrogance and learning how to speak with them in a way that's respectful about delicate things too. It's been a great gift in that. So it's like when I'm with people who I really do love, who have a different point of view, it's like, how do I maintain this relationship? Love is important. Love is the most important thing here, right? Love and acceptance. And so it's like, how do I work around this? If I make that important, find a way, even in the moments that I'm mostly challenged. And Do I have capacity for a lot of people like that? No.
Mm.
I have let go of so many people that are Trump supporters, but can I let go of my parents? No. I can't let go of
yeah.
I can't
Same
let go of
here.
one of my main teachers is a Trump supporter too. I can't let go of him either, you know? And so I got capacity for like 3. Like 3 intimates.
Yeah, families
3 people that are
families a
close
little
to
different.
me, you know, and if I can learn to work with that and keep that integrated in my life in a heart space, and learn how to work with it, then I grow in a different way, you know.
Yeah. Hmm.
Mm.
Well,
With my parents, we just kind of talk about the kids and talk about gardening and outdoor stuff. I mean, that's one of the things we have in common is a shared appreciation of nature, you know, and just a lot of talk about in regards to that, to our experiences being outside, and we both share the kind of wonder and awe. We speak differently about God now, but it's an experience that we have that's very parallel, and you know, it's something we link up on.
Isn't that funny? It's like a person is so much a different point of view. It's like suddenly you can share this moment of just total realization and awakened awareness of the moment. It's like here you are in this state of awareness together. It's like in that moment, none of that stuff exists. Right?
Yeah.
It's just
I had that happen when, I mean, it's like the phenomenon, and I think this goes whether someone's on the right or the left or anywhere in between, is when they're alone and they're looking at the world through their screen, through comment threads. It's so easy to just become polarized in that moment. And Facebook the algorithm is designed to make you polarized in that moment. And so, of course, every time anybody brought up vaccination or anything like that, I mean, I don't actively engage people, but I sit there and go, "Oh, you idiot," you know, or unfollow, block, depending on if I know the person or not. But then I went to this crystal shop down the street here in Onjinagoa, and it's run by this old, cool, like British punker guy who retired here, and he's got tattoos and he's got this crystal shop. And I was asking him, what does this crystal do? What does this crystal do? You know, and he's telling me all about the crystals. And we're kind of like starting to open up about, okay, are you as much of a weirdo as me? You know, like at first he's like, it's a hobby. I collect crystals. And I was like, oh, well, I like to use this one on my third eye. And he's like, oh, okay, so we can talk, you know, like we're both, but then at one point he was talking about, yeah, I think they're going to make everybody get the vaccine. And I was so far away from wanting to like engage in an argument about vax or anti-vax. Like suddenly the label anti-vaxxer, I was like, okay, this guy technically, if you're going to label people, is an anti-vaxxer. But I mean, he's the only other white guy I've met in Goa, for one, in the 2 years I've lived here. And you know, so there's that bias, I'll admit, but you know, we're speaking English and talking about, you know, England and US, and usually when I'm speaking English, I speak a little slower because people, you know, it's not everybody's first language here. I mean, it's nobody's first language here. So I bonded with this guy, and I had no issue whatsoever with the fact that he was an anti-vaxxer. And so that kind of woke me up a little bit. I think everybody should have one friend on the other side, at least. So
I used to have a friend of me.
Yeah.
well that's the thing. I would think if
kid from Kentucky.
In one social network, I think if a person doesn't have at least one of those friends, or two even, you know, then something is unhealthy about one social network.
It's a bubble.
It's like we should not live in an echo chamber.
Right.
And that's part of the problem of what we're trying to do here with this talk and discussion is peel away a little bit of the echo chamber that everybody's in, because that's what social media is, and that's what our social lives are if we groom them to be. And it's like, you know, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
I wonder how much you were talking about relanguaging things, brother. I wonder how much more can be relanguaged in order to sort of build bridges of understanding.
For example, it's like this whole abortion thing. It's like, I'm against abortion. It kills babies. It kills God's given souls. It's against God's plan. It's like, okay, well, totally for no abortion if we also take care of the kids. It's like, of course we can take care of the kids. Okay, so then we're on for universal health care. And it's like,
Right.
it's like, and then in 9 times out of 10, the response I get is, I see where you're headed with that, Jim. And I'm like, yeah, I think it's important. We got to think about these kids and their health. And it's like, if you're born in a situation where mom doesn't want you, like, how's it going to feel? It's like, you'd have to have a safety net, have someone take care of you, you know? So let's think about that. And it's like, there are ways if we just not think, just get quiet.
Yeah,
Just
I
get
think
quiet.
for me, I've had
You know?
the complete opposite experience there. You know, whenever I've tried to go that type of route, they change topic. So we'll go from abortion to universal healthcare, and they'll expand on all of the things that they're against with universal healthcare, ignoring where we came to get there. And so it ends up with this cyclical argument that goes on and on and on and on, because they just keep jumping from individual topic to individual topic and not recognizing.
So infuriating when people use logical fallacies consciously or unconsciously. They like as a form of dirty martial arts, you know, of words or something like. Like, oh, you use that word, so we'll say this. Oh, you use that word, so I'll say that. And it's like, yeah, but are we communicating or are we not? You know, like, you remember what we said? Yeah.
It's equally infuriating to be called out by a logical fallacy in a way that's arrogant. So it's like approaching a person when they have a logical fallacy, we need to approach with sensitivity, right, and talking to them like they're our friend instead of an enemy. So I just wanted to say that.
That's true.
Well, that's truly Christ-like if you can pull that off.
Dude, what the fuck are we trying to do here? Come on.
Right.
With the abortion topic, I'll go back to number 6, because number 6 basically describes an abortion.
Numbers. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the book of Numbers, chapter 6.
That's
basically
right.
describes an abortion.
So, do you have these written down, Doc Bones? Like,
I just know a few.
Okay. I'm gonna send you a message, because this is such amazing, beautiful, wonderful information. The fact you have it memorized is like,
because like with in this particular one, the story is basically about a guy thinks that his wife has been cheating on him, and goes to the rabbis to find out what to do, and they basically say, well, here's a potion that you can make, have her drink the potion, and if she's with child, it will get rid of it.
I cannot wait to show that to my dad.
Penny royalty.
You know, one of the
you've got the combination of abortion and pharmacology, which a lot of Christians today are absolutely convinced is witchcraft, and all in one wonderful story.
Wow.
But see, I've also had similar experiences, though, going to people with the Bible or evidence, and then they change the topic, or they don't want to look at it, or they say something just completely stupid. Like, I spent so many years in college just to show my dad, just to prove to my dad evidence that I knew what I was talking about, present him evidence about certain things. And he looks at me after I show him this research, and he looks at me and he says, "You say that because they're funded by liberals."
Oh.
And I was like, I felt so defeated. I spent years working up just to this moment to get him to say, "Oh, wow, maybe I should look at this." And instead it was like, "I'm not going to look at this. It's funded by liberals." And it's like we can't change people. We can't change people. And if that's part of our agenda is to change a person, it's like, I'm sorry, man. That's not compassion. Compassion is accepting a person for where they're at.
I guess my agenda with getting the 4 of us together today was like mostly not for the people who are stuck in their position and they're not going to budge, but for the guy sitting next to him, kind of having to like nod along, but kind of in his mind thinking, is everybody like this? You know, like, am I the only one who thinks maybe this guy's full of shit? and just to kind of go, no, there are others like you.
Welcome, brother.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the reasons why I continue to
forever.
post on social networks at all.
Yeah.
Is I know I'm not going to change anybody's mind. I'm not trying to change anybody's mind, but it's for the people that are out there that are trying to figure out what in the world is going on and thinking,
Yeah.
am I nuts for thinking this? No, you're not the only one.
No.
There are others. There are more of us out there.
Yeah.
You know, it's a voice that I don't see very much, you know, outside of a few people. So I try to share it a little bit to let people know they're not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I think like there was so much energy growing up spent on like evangelism and witnessing to people to try to convert them to evangelicalism. Sometimes I think we need to do like a reverse evangelism or missionary work and send like missionaries of Gnosis to the Bible Belt.
Mm.
We could call it reverse missionary position.
Or just call it doggy and don't explain.
You know, one of the coolest Bible sections that I find I've had interesting talks with people about is discussing the year of Jubilee, where every 50 years, and it's something I thought about since I'm turning into 50 pretty soon, but every 50th year, you know, after 7 cycles of 7 to 49, the following year was the year of Jubilee, where like all the bank records were thrown in the fire and everything kind of went to zero. And land was redistributed and stuff like that. And all debts were released.
Yeah. Even a murderer after 49 years was released, if they were still alive.
That seems to be one of the things that prophets were often like railing about is like, you guys aren't doing the year of Jubilee thing. You're supposed to do that. This is the most important part of the law.
Yeah.
And you're getting hung up on these other parts of the law that aren't as central to
Yeah, it's a convenient thing to forget when you want to, like, you know, accrue a lot of debt and make everyone your debt slave. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that very much relates back to what Leo was saying, you know, trying to come at it from a place of compassion. You know, what the prophets were railing against was the fact that the people weren't being compassionate.
Yeah.
So, hey, let's come back to a place of compassion and try to do this right this time.
Right. So living in a country where our First Amendment protects our right to speak and to see through, you know, live feed cams, police beating on people who are there, you know, speaking their First Amendment, and to be both with you who are both on the front to actually see some of that, just like, so what do we do? You know, and what do we do? And if you're out there and feeling lost and alone, it's like, reach out because we're here.
Yeah. Solidarity, man, is what's going to get all of us through this. Finding a sense of community with people that you can share solidarity with. I think that's what's going to get people through this horrible transition in social history.
You know, what I've learned that means building friendships one by one.
Yeah.
Learning what friends that I have see how I see, and spending a little bit more time with them and talking a little bit more with them, and spending a little less time with people who may be thinking differently.
Where are you at geographically?
I'm in the Midwest.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
I had a really good friend who was in Minneapolis during the protests that were happening in Minneapolis after things were happening up there. And he, like Dr. Bones here, had experience of seeing the KKK march through the street that he was in, and him quaking with fear that the house he was in was going to be shot out because there was a Black Lives Matter sign outside his house, and they were shooting out houses that had Black Lives Matter signs.
Holy crapples. I didn't know
He
they were
came
doing
back in shock, and it took him a good year to finally settle down. because he realized the truth of this country. And so it's like people, the thing I don't like about the Golden Dawn, more than anything, is it's a great system. And it's a system where you can find pockets to hide out in, don't do any work, kind of hide out personality. And especially if the lodge is a hierarchy that has trouble with questions. Right. So it's like, I really urge people, you know, if you find yourself in an order that you're not sure about, ask questions and make sure they're from the heart and they're feeling good and they're about integrity and good character, right?
Yeah.
And let that be your lead.
That's the
Let
word.
Christ's heart be your lead, right? Ask questions from that place. And if you ask the right questions, you'll find out what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But I would suggest that's more an indictment of the individuals than it is of the system itself.
Yeah.
Because I feel like with any system, be it Golden Dawn or Thelema or whatever, there are places to hide if you want to. But if you want to find out where people really are coming from, like you said, ask questions.
Yeah.
Hey, Edward.
People pose when you ask them on a public platform. You know what I mean? Like they grandstand for their audience and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's, you know, it's best to start the questions private, you know, or in person if possible. Oh, it's Miss Gruffles.
Miss Gruffles wants to say hi, Edward.
Hi.
Oh. Hi, Edward. Edward got to spend some time with Miss Gruffles when he was out here visiting in California.
Yeah, she helped me pack all my stuff and ship it to India.
He's
Amazing.
my own personal Anubis. Hey, Edward, I'm gonna have to go to sleep pretty soon. I got to get the
Okay,
kids
yeah,
up to
well,
school in the morning.
let's wrap up.
Was there anything else that you wanted to cover today?
Well, gosh, not really. I mostly just wanted to introduce you. And so I think that's mission accomplished. And any other good that comes from this episode is just a bonus.
It was great talking to you guys, man. This has really been enjoyable.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
thought it would be. Because
Yeah, I
I mean,
definitely
with
look
the
forward to
dynamic is
corresponding.
Robby and me, he's talking about, oh, I'm gonna go out there and punch a Nazi, and I'm like, oh well, I'm going to the beach today, you know, and so it's like, okay, well, I'm not even like him, you know what I mean?
As far
But
as
you
that
guys
feeling
are.
goes, one of the best things I learned from college is it's like, what can we do with structural injustice? It's the first thing is we learn and we raise awareness. And the second thing we do is we build solidarity. And then if we do those first two things, then the third thing happens where we're shown what to do, right? So it's like that feeling that you have when you punch a Nazi. That's great. It's like, hold on to it, cultivate it, like, but think long term.
Yeah.
Think
So I
long
thought that
term.
was step 4. Is it shows you what to do, and step 4 is punch a Nazi.
Cool. Miss Gruffles is my battle dog. All right.
All right.
I'm gonna get ready to hit the hay. I look forward to corresponding. Blessings, guys. LVX.
Blessings. Thank you so much, brother. We'll talk soon.
Fun.
Peace.
Okay. Thank you both. Good night.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you. I love this.
Absolutely.
I love the whole getup.
Thank you.
Cool. See you.
See ya.
Is that okay, Mr. McKinley? एक क्रांतिकारी की दूसरी क्रांतिकारी से मुलाकात हो रही है. Thank you. चलें?
Thank you, Robby Strong, PhD, aka Frater Silence, the Aquarian. And thank you, Eli and Bishop Leo, for being my guest today on the Esoterinerd podcast. And as always, special thanks to Susumu Ueda and his father and the other monks at Jofuku Inn on Mount Koyasan 3 hours north by train from Osaka, for the music you're hearing right now. The same music that every episode opens with. Special thanks to, Indiana Jones, and what else did we have in there? Baby, what's the name of that movie again with the revolutionaries? Reng de Basenti. That was the clip at the end of the interview, just before. What? Color Me Saffron. The color of sacrifice. Watch that movie in Hindi with subtitles. It's on Netflix, I think. I mean, it's on Netflix here. Hopefully there too. It's a good movie. I'll put a little thing anyway, so you can see at least the trailer for it. Special thanks to Camille and Kennerly for the harp transition into and out of the conversation itself. And special thanks to you, the Esoterinerd, listening to this podcast, possibly watching this podcast. And, okay. Well, let's close with a piece by Eli. I think I'm going to choose the one called Bellum. It has a certain, sentimental quality in the title for me personally, and for a few others, no doubt, who are watching this. I won't explain. I'll just say blessings to you, and good night.
Disgrace